Taking control of the enemy forces in any form is an incredibly powerful tactic, and there are many different pins, nets, snares, whatever you want to call them, that can be comboed up with other tactics for absolutely devastating effect. One of the best sources of this power is the Net of Amantok in the Law of Light. This will literally just pin a single unit in place for a fair amount of time, or you can overcast it to pin an area. But there's lots of this type of effect in various spells and abilities, such as the Tormentor's Sword for various generic lords, or the Prey of Anathrema for the Glade Lady for the Wood Elves. Wurzag has his own unique pin in Effigy of the Git, and the Skaven have one in the Law of Ruin with Howling Warp Gale. So for a lot of this tactic, you're going to need one of those kind of pins, but we can do a similar thing with massive speed reduction spells as well, like the Dwarf Rune of Slowness, which reduces speed by 45%, or there's Storm of Shadows from the Law of Yin for Cathay, which reduces speed by 45%, or another one of my Green Boys units in the Nasty Skulkers and their Smoke Bomb, which reduces speed by 60%. So that's just a handful of the pins and slows that we can use for the following tactics. This first one is a good old classic that we are going to require a light wizard preferably for, as they have one of the longest durations on their net, and he's going to team up with all of our ranged units. We've got 2 units of normal handgunners, accurate armor piercing damage, the silver bullets who have stalks so the enemy won't know they're there, which might help lure them in, and also a cannon at the back as well. So we're going to apply the tactic of focus firing and mix it in with the net for devastating combinational effect. Now we could take our units off fire at will to maybe make the enemy feel a little bit safer as they approach, like it's not too risky. We could even try and lure them in by baiting them with our Lord. And then when they get close enough in range of all our missiles, that's when we hit them with the net spell, which is going to leave them there for about 20 seconds. And we are going to absolutely hammer them and focus fire them, and there ain't a goddamn thing they can do about it. This is a great tactic for sniping down lords and catching them out. I've killed many of people's lords online with this tactic, but it works great in campaign 2 as the AI just loves charging into you blindly. So a great one for blasting down large targets, whether it's a lord, a hero on a mount, a single large entity, monster, dragon, whatever. The net buys time for all your missiles to do a lot of damage. We can also kind of do the same thing with melee units as well. If there's a big strong monster running around all over your army, you can pin it in place, in this case with the warp grinders, and send in your best anti-large units to take it on. If it's against the AI, they'll probably stay there and fight them, although this tactic with melee generally works better with a huge concentration of force, so bringing in like the Council Guard and 2 heroes and a lord and all piling them into the one monster. That would be a lot of damage in a short space of time, and the monster wouldn't be able to escape for at least 10 or 15 seconds. A really nice use of area pins, like the Overcast Net of Amantok demonstrated by Lord Mazdamundi here, is that you can pin a lot of units in a space and then do whatever the hell you like to them. How about dropping a Banishment right in the middle of them? How about dropping the Ruination of Cities right in the middle of them? This is a really nice combo with those moving vortex spells like Banishment or Flamestorm, because they're pretty much guaranteed to get some good hits on things as long as you manage to capture a good few units in your net aura. And then we've got this poor old light wizard. Look at all these beastmen coming for him. He's gonna die. Only joking. He's just gonna net them all in place and then shit all over them. Although not before he falls over, apparently. But then he's gonna get his Hellstorm rocket batteries and absolutely plaster this AoE area, much in the same way like we do with the vortex spells. Get them all clumped up together and then fire into the crowd, preferably with explosives. How about a more defensive usage? Here with these Orc Boar Boy Biggins, we're going to take the charge bonus away from one of the most powerful charging units in the game, in the Blood Knights, which allows my unit to get their charge on them and do more damage without taking so much in return. Especially important for something like Boar Boys that are somewhat more on the squishy side. It's not going to allow them to beat the Blood Knights, but it will allow them to do more damage than they normally would, putting some big damage on an elite, powerful, dangerous, far more expensive unit. So we can use pins to take charge bonuses away. They can also be a great way to get yourself out of trouble. Poor old Nakari here is about to get goon squatted, but with a little bit of Phantasmagoria that pins enemies in place in an AoE, he can pin them all and get away from there, getting himself to safety, getting himself with some other friendly units that can support him, thus preventing him from being assassinated. So another great defensive use here. I've used this many times with Wurzag, who is a pretty squishy lord that goon squads like to go after, but Effigy of the Git has saved him many a time. Another great use of area pins is for simply disrupting the enemy formation as it's advancing on you. If you can pin half of their front line in place, it only means a couple of units are going to actually come at you, at least at first, so you can deal with their army in 2 smaller chunks rather than 1 big one. So it just gives you a little window to do a little more damage to those units that have come forward and get them mostly beaten up before the rest arrives. And depending on what you manage to net and where, it may make it easier to get in certain other maneuvers like flanking, for example. If they have less units to move around and get in the way of your flanking units, it should be easier to get them in there. And do realize that all the previous tactics I've just talked about can be done with slows as well. If you slow an enemy down by 60%, you can still blast them and focus fire them pretty well, and they won't be able to easily escape, for example. So it kind of works the same as a net, pin, or snare spell. Now, to get a little more complex, we can combo all these things as well to take control of an enemy unit for a fair amount of time. Here, we've got good old Scarbrand. We've used Effigy of the Git, so that's like a 13-second pin. And then for the entire duration of this combo, we're going to have some Spider Riders shooting at him with their poison ammo, which reduces speed by 15%, so constant 15% speed debuff on him. We're going to be shooting him with 3 units of Araboys just to do the damage. And then when those 13 seconds are up and he's free from Effigy of the Git, we're going to bring over the nasty Skulkers just nearby him, not into him to attack him, but just near him, and they're going to drop their Smoke Bomb, which is a minus 60% speed debuff for around 20 seconds. And don't forget, the poison arrows are still shooting at him, so that's a minus 75% speed reduction overall. And here he is, somehow nearly catching up with my nasty Skulkers, even though he's got like 15 less speed. So let's drop Mither on him as well from the River Troll Hag, and that's another minus 60%. So we've taken control of him for like a minute. We've reduced his speed massively, pinned him in place for like a minute. And we've been able to absolutely trash him with all of our missiles, and all he can do is breathe little bits of fire at us that barely do anything. Very nice. Obviously, this isn't so easy to execute in a full battle, but you get the idea. You can constantly combo up those speed reductions, those pins, and just take control of a powerful unit and do damage to them. Kislev can get some nice combos going as well, as they are the masters of ice. Here, we're going to use the spell Ice Sheet from the Lore of Ice, Katerin bringing that into play, but that's only a 25% speed reduction, right? It's not that much. But if we combo it up with Frostbite, which many of the Kislev units have, we can add another 30%, so minus 55% speed, with the Frostbite coming from the Ice Guard in this case. But they can only hit 1 or 2 units at a time, so instead we're going to use the spell Ice Maiden's Kiss from Katerin. It's a breath spell that we can aim through to hit all 3 of these units that are next to each other, thus applying our 55% speed reduction to all 3 of those frontline units, buying us more time to fire on them with all of our Kislevi units. So we're comboing up the speed reductions to make a greater speed reduction, which just buys us more time to do whatever we want to the enemy units. So that's one for Kislev. Like I say, many factions have many different spells and abilities that bring slows and pins. Oh, you want one more? Well, go on then. How about for the dwarfs? We've got a Rune Lord in Thorek, we've got a Gyro Bomber which has the suppressed speed reduction, and the Engineer who has the Flash Bomb, which is a big old speed reduction. So we can combo those up in various ways. It might be overkill to use them all at once, but here's it happening anyway on poor old Kolek. He's got minus 30% speed from Suppressed, minus 45 from the Rune of Slowness, and minus 60 from the Flash Bomb. All in all, a speed reduction of 135%. So how is he still moving with 8 speed? Well, I guess there's probably a cap on the amount of speed reduction you can apply to an enemy unit. I guess it's like 90% or something. If it was 100%, obviously, then it would stop the moving and it would become a pin, which is a different thing. So do be aware of that, and don't overkill on your speed reductions, like using these 3 together. Just 2 of these should give a nice enough speed reduction to get some work done. But there we go, various ways to get damage done and to take control of some of the enemy's more powerful units with pins and speed reductions. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the future.